press a prompt to allow like 50 megs of storage or whatever, and then we'll go and start doing all the images and stuff. But we try and keep all that in the background where possible, and it shouldn't. We try and not get in the way of the user, right? They should just be able to navigate the app and
So
not
it comes
care.
down to rendering at that point.
Yeah, it's all down to rendering.
But aren't you just generating another problem when they run out of local storage, and they have to go actually start managing local storage themselves?
If we come back to the question about do we need new tools, new metrics, and new visualizations, you're saying if a single page app measuring the rendering of that thing that I've done becomes critical, do we have the tools? I mean, Peter, you make tools. Do we have the tools to measure that right now? And I think the answer is probably not.
Actually, we do, but they're manual. I mean, you have the timeline and dev tools of rendering and painting events, but I don't know, is that automated?
Request animation frame is probably your best friend, but back to it's not easy, right? I mean, figuring out if your single page app is behaving smoothly on the client side in RUM by hooking together a bunch of RAF calls and looking for jank and that kind of stuff, it's doable, but it's complicated.
So the answer, how much time do I have? So the answer to that is yes, we probably do need new tools and new metrics.
And I think you get to a point where, to be honest, sometimes it's best just having a manual tester using it and going, that's a bit sluggish. You know, there's some things that I don't know, it's not the answer anybody wants.
But then you're limited by CPU and whatever your system is running.
Yeah, but that's what the user's going to do at the end of the day. That's what
No,
all
I
I care
know, I'm
about.
just
Right?
saying.
We've got a hand up over here.
IE11 has a lazy load attribute for images. Is it worth maybe having a kind of, IE11 has a lazy load attribute for images. Is it worth having maybe an attribute for a tag which would be like above the fold, or which would basically give the browser a hint that this is your main content that you want to prioritize? Or maybe below the fold you'd have a lazy load tag.
There's a combination.
It depends on the browser what's going to be above the fold. You don't know whenever you're sending the stuff down, like where is that fold going to be if people can
There is no fold in the browser.
Yeah.
No, but say if on BBC you'd have all your main images for your stories, then you've got your sub-stories. So you basically want to tell the browser to prioritize.
Yeah, so that's not a IE specific. IE was the first ones to implement it. It's a W3C spec for lazy load, and I think postpone is the other one, or I'll probably get the naming wrong, but there's sort of two of them. One is don't load this until later, and one is I care less about this. And it's sort of the opposite of saying this is important, but you'd have to tag all of your content, and it's kind of an attempt to eliminate the JS lazy load implementations for images while still letting the browser know about all the content and give it priority hints. So this is above the fold and important is basically the stuff on your page that doesn't have lazy load on it. But you should start seeing it come out to the other browsers. It's part of the same group that did the performance specs.
We've got about a minute left. I'm going to take one last question from Alois down the back there. If you can run the mic, yell very loudly, Alois.
Just
yeah,
yell.
Yeah.
Well, for the video.
So about the single page app topic, do we need new tools and new visualizations? Tooling-wise, so there's a couple of RUM tools who worked into this. There's commercial ones, but there's also Caliper who look into frameworks. And I think the story is a twofold one. First of all, we need definitely support from framework vendors, because that's how we made it possible. We had to interact with them. Because a lot of their asynchronous logic we have to follow, just like typing in a keyword, it goes back with an XHR to the server, updates the table, and then renders it on the page. It comes down to framework instrumentation that you would have to do, or frameworks would build this instrumentation right into those frameworks. That's the part that definitely is, I think, with the framework vendors, and they have to do it because they are the ones who know best how their frameworks actually work. The other piece to it is, what we're really missing is that piece. Like with this framework instrumentation, I could to the point, like I updated the DOM. It's really knowing when certain elements have been painted on the screen. That would then be something I see in the browser. The question where fit this instrumentation of frameworks, on the one hand, frameworks should build it in. For those who have not built it in, you would also have to have some means in the browser to instrument the browser at runtime, because that's what you have to do today, because certain RUM tools are often not able to instrument it while it is sent to the browser, or you need to do any pre-processing here. Okay. But it's a twofold story. It's a framework story to a great extent, and there's two solutions to it.
Okay.
And it's also a story really when it comes to rendering that really ties down to the browser.
got to move on to the next topic, but just to summarise that, I think that was there was a good point made there. There's some big sort of emphasis maybe shifting to the framework vendors to really help people understand the performance and the timing instrumentation within that framework. Plus, there's also the point you're making about the browser vendors. But we've got to move on. Rich Howard.
So my question to both the panel and to the audience is, what role will automated front-end optimization tools play in our increasingly complex world? Do they add yet another complicated layer of abstraction, or will they become a necessity?
So FEO tools like mod page speed or Riverbed Stingray Optimizer. I mean, you're a fan of Varnish. That's a front-end reverse proxy type stuff.
I think I'd class Varnish as different than those sort of things, because Varnish, it behaves like a HTTP proxy. By default it'll follow HTTP headers and it won't do anything weird. A lot of these other ones, I get very hesitant about using things that are just going to do magic in front of any code I write.
I think it's such a large education process for front-end developers as well. I mean, especially those that might just be entry-level to mid-level. A lot of companies are trying to take care of things like performance and security with appliances and plugins and things that go along with the web server. So I don't know if it's needed or not. I mean, I don't know if web developers should just know the rules automatically, or if they need the help to.
So I think there's...
Peter, first.
Yeah, I mean, as a developer, I want to know what happens. So I don't like these kind of tools because I don't know exactly. Exactly, I said the magic things about it. It's making me unsecure, actually.
But as an operations manager who's been waiting for the developers to speed up the website pages, if I can sling 50 grand at Riverbed and it makes my site faster, that's the cost of one developer. Well, why wouldn't I do that? So I'll give Andy a come and knock him at you.
We're trying to optimize for different browsers that behave in different ways, different devices over different network conditions. I think for a certain number of people, I think it's the only way to go. I think because we're trading off the cost of employing developers who may not be doing a great job anyway, because there are some great developers in the world and there are some very average developers, and we see it in the way that pages behave. And it's, if I can deploy an automated device that will speed up that site and give those visitors a better experience, then why not?
So I'll take a comment from Perry, and can somebody refresh on slide, because I think it's crashed.
No.
Just need somebody to press that button. So Perry, stand up and wait for the mic. Quick. Let's go.
All I was going to say is that I think I agree with Steve and with Andy, because I think we're getting asked as developers, ops, web ops, whatever we do, we're getting asked to do more and more and more with less and less and less time to do it. And it's actually the business that's going to dictate this, I think. And I think that these kind of automated tools and devices are going to be the only way that we're going to be able to keep up with. So there's going to be HTTP 2 versus HTTP 1.1. We're already struggling with just dealing with what we have to deal with now. And it's only going to get worse. We're talking about later on, there's going to be new devices, wearable technologies, TVs to concern ourselves with. I just think we're going to have to do it.
And for those of us that are not in the performance consulting ring, I guess it's hard to get time in companies to work on performance to make your pages faster. It's hard to sell a lot of bosses on doing that as developers who work on an application or a site that's driven by whatever advertising dollars, whatever you want to call it, someone else's budget basically, and they don't want to allot for that performance boost. I can speak to that personally. So,
and I think there's some class of optimizations that you're going to start getting more comfortable with handing off. The one that comes to mind in particular is image transcoding, supporting WebP. There's a whole bunch of things that you're not going to want to have to rebuild an image server, and you'll start pushing off to appliances or a service to do for you, because you're not going to want to maintain libraries of 10 different image formats as we get like WebP, JPEG, XR, and whatever else comes down the pipe.
I think there's a difference between making a conscious decision as a developer saying, I want to farm this off to somebody else who's going to look after my images, to have just some appliance stuck in front of all your code that does whatever it wants because it thinks it's better. We've had problems with mobile operators doing this sort of thing where they're going like, oh, that bit of JavaScript, we can optimize that for you.
Sorry, the person who asked this question works for Vodafone.
Well, in the early days of the web, that was one of the things that caught us off guard, and because operators think that they know things better than you, but if you're a developer who knows what they're doing, sometimes you know better than the appliance, and the appliance just gets in your way.
I think will they become a necessity or an increasingly complex world? I guess the question is, do you see the world? We've talked about components, we've talked about HTTP 2.0. I don't see the world getting less complex. So there's only so much complexity that you can deal with as a developer, surely, before somebody's going to say, let's hand this off to an automated process that does it better. I'm sure Guy would say that, Akamai, the next generation CDNs.
Try to do those. So yes, I'm, totally biased here. For Akamai, I feel.
Stand up.
But I do think that, two things. One, as opposed to the carrier proxies, the intent here is to be something that's an extension of your platform. So it's to save you time. It operates based on your instructions, granted, instead of writing code, you're checking a box. But you're tuning it and you're configuring it to your needs. So not quite as simple as a Varnish HTTP instruction, but not that much different than Varnish ESI or than Varnish kind of elaborate caching policies. So that's just sort of a general thought. And yeah, and I think the point I come back to every time we talk to users of this or people considering using it is, if you can automate it, why do it manually? So the exact range of where the tool's good enough, where they're not good enough, what is your level of comfort? That's something that as an industry we still need to evolve and improve. But I think at the end of the day, if you have a way to do it automatically and it encompasses knowledge and takes away complexity, the only reason not to do so is that you're not used to it, right? And you can overcome that.
30 seconds if you want to go this way. And sorry, was it?
I just wanted to add on to in terms of what you're saying, and it's great that
Very
companies
quickly.
like yourself are trying to act as an extension of the platform, but actually, in terms of my experience with the kind of clients I'm dealing, our MSAs don't actually give us free reign on our platform. We have to play by their rules. So a lot of times what is in our control are things like the build tools, optimizing things down at our end with regards to before we get onto that platform. So a lot of times, like I said, sticking to the basics effectively is often the best platform.
Good, grab Mike over here. One last very quick question. Or very quick comment.
So I'm interested in the hardware side of this because I work for a hardware company. So, for me, load time is important. Yes, you need to get stuff down as quickly as possible. But what's more important is how quickly the user can see the stuff. And that goes through the hardware. You were discussing stuff like batching is bad, but do you consider the hardware underlying as well? Batching is really good for a GPU to work with.
So batching, a GPU doesn't know how to deal with a sprite though, right? So as far as the browser is concerned, the GPU doesn't deal with the sprite. The GPU deals with the sprite in a whole bunch of different places and clips it and doesn't deal with it better than images.
But does
So
it?
I'm going to have to cut that one off, and you can take it offline because we've got about 5 minutes left, and we've still got a question to go from Paul Lewis, which actually ties in very neatly with something that was just mentioned. Actually,
My question got tweaked, so which is the topic of the day. So I thought I'd fight fire with fire and tweak it back. How should teams balance branding and personality against performance? And I guess I had web fonts and images and such in mind. And how can they meaningfully measure the benefits of branding versus the benefit of speed?